I didn't have that because growing up through high school, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 people. And so when I moved out, I had to try to get all my stuff out, like to be conscious for my mom, but I also didn't want to leave things back. I don't think I really felt like I should or had the right to have an attachment to that childhood home. Similarly, my mom recently moved, and so the home that my mom and my youngest sister are living in isn't the home that I know. And I think there is no childhood home that I even feel attached to because we were moving so often and that we did go through these phases of housing instability. And so I think that, before COVID for the last 3 years, I was living, moving in and out of dorms, not living in any like dorm room for longer than 3 months or, 6 months. But then the added layer of that is even when I had that dorm room, I was only there maybe a few nights of the month, right? Otherwise, I was traveling, I was living out of hotels, sleeping at airports, sleeping on red eyes. So I think that this idea of like needing to be on the go and having a suitcase that I can depend on is like makes a lot of sense. Like that is the life that I've lived for the last few years. What doesn't make sense is that now I'm, a couple years now into a global pandemic where I'm 1 year into a 2-year lease. I am in a financially stable position. I shouldn't have to worry about moving in. And yet I'm having these panic attacks of where am I going to live next? Am I going to have a place to live next? What if I, don't have any income in a year, which is a valid fear, like most startups fail, right? But it's this thing that I have real anxiety about that's keeping me up at night, and I'm like actively trying to figure out. And it's not new anxiety. I feel like I've always had this anxiety of like where I'm gonna live, the stability of my life in general. Am I gonna be safe, right? Like that's all I think typical kind of PTSD anxiety of that results from growing up with housing instability and home instability as a kid. But I feel like kind of what I'm trying to work through right now is really that survivor mentality of trying to remind myself like that anxiety was valid in the past and I'm safe now, right? Like when I think back to when I was in high school, I used to have similar phenomenons of panic attacks about like whether or not I was safe in the present moment, and I would start to have these flashbacks to trauma. And my therapist used to have me actively clap or stand up, like do something physical to snap out of it and then tell myself that I was safe, right? So sometimes I would have to like clap, like literally clap really loudly, like over and over again, stand up, change my body position and say, okay, I'm not there, I'm safe, like rationally I'm safe, like I'm alone, I'm safe, like everything's fine. Or at for about a year, I had like a rubber band around my wrist and I would like snap it, to try to kind of give myself a sensation of getting out of that headspace. And I think that is kind of the same anxiety I'm having now, right? I don't think I had this anxiety like for the first few months of my lease, and maybe that was because I was like, oh, in my head, I'm not even 25% of my like the way through my lease, but now it's like I'm hitting that 50% mark, and I'm like daily anxiety about where I'm gonna live, right? And it's really something that I want to work through, and I wanted to talk about it today because I think that it's something that is kind of the obsessing thing that my anxiety is looking at right now, where my anxiety is like, things in life are rather stable and I feel like things with the company are going well. My relationship is stable and well and safe and loving. And this is the thing that I'm obsessing over right now. And it's been really exhausting. I've also been thinking a lot about like that I have this sense of pride around the fact that I can pick up and move really easily. Like, I think that when I say, and Henry pointed this out recently, when I even say the words like, oh, I lived out of a suitcase for 3 years, like I feel a sense of pride. And I think people can sense that sense of pride when I talk about it. And I think it's because for me, being able to do that was my claim to independence, right? Was that I didn't have to rely on a lease or didn't have to rely on, having adult furniture or having to rely on my parents or school even to give me that safe home. But like I could live out of a suitcase and it meant that I was free to go and free to move as I pleased. And so I think that there was an element of control.